Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Music Lab podcast. My name is Dogg, and I am so excited to be back with all of you for another episode of the podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel and our social media pages. That helps us, that helps the bands that we feature, like Ralph and Cuffed Up. Check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters. That's RAWR, outfitters.com for all your clothing needs. Spring is here, at least for some parts of the country. So check them out for all your clothing needs. Ralph, welcome to the show. How are you feeling, my friend?
Feeling great. Album release week, so there's just a lot of really amazing stuff happening this week. Yeah, everything's great.
The debut full-length album. When I say that to you, what does that mean to you?
I mean, I've been having to answer this question like all week, talking to friends and interviews and stuff. And the hilarious part, it's just like it's kind of anticlimactic in a lot of ways because we started this journey of this album in December 2022, like when we started like writing to finish the record before we started recording in January 2023. And so that's like a year and a half at this point. And yeah, it's like it's the whole thing of like you're releasing the songs into the world and suddenly it's not yours anymore. And it's a pretty surreal feeling. But we're glad that it is in the world and everyone gets to like decide on what songs from the record really resonates with them, which sounds like it tends to be a different song for every person. So yeah.
Yeah, and so we talked about this. You released 5 of the songs before, and it's a 10-song album, correct?
Yeah, so we basically released the record before we
So
released it.
what was the thought behind that? Was there a lot of discussion? Was there any pushback amongst the band members to do it that way, or was that you kind of all democratically decided that?
Yeah, we all knew that we wanted to put as many songs out for the most part, and when we're speaking to our friend who runs the little like label that put out the album, little being like not little but like independent, just like it's run by one person. Uh, when we were talking with Tom, it was just like let's just put out the songs we think are people really like drive with and. So the first songs that we put out 2 songs, and we wanted to kind of give everyone like a nice reintroduction to like the band and actually like the new lineup, with the 3 of us and so we put out Little Wins and Love Is, and that was really great to see kind of like the love that we got from those songs. Like Little Wins ended up being, I think KCRW's like best new songs or something, like songs you need to know this week or whatever, and it was like a nice little surprise that like they love the song so much. And we try to come with all the singles, we try to like come up with some really cool music video ideas, so we did a music video for every single song that came out before. And typically you don't do that, no one has like the budget to do that, but nowadays because technology is so great, there's really no excuse. Like you could do it. So like yeah, 3 of the 5 music videos we shot were on my iPhone 15, and it's amazing because you could shoot in like cinema, quality style video nowadays. So um, yeah, so we put those 2 songs out first, and then obviously you heard the last 3 up until the record.
So you obviously did the filming yourself, but how much creative input was between the 3 of you for those videos?
It was a lot. Everyone kind of spearheaded some different ideas. Like the first 2 videos for Little Wins and Love Is, we collaborated with our director friend Ben Melman, who actually directed our music video before in the past, called Terminal. Who had Brian from Silvers and Pickups was in the music video, so he directed that. So we wanted to do something with him. So we can, and then I came up with the idea of like supporting, little wins, like supporting local businesses. And so we literally just went to our favorite local businesses, like Pizzanista, which is our favorite pizza spot, or like Kingswell Skate Shop in my neighborhood. Like we just like went to all these places and we're like, can we show you guys some love and can we film for just let us film with our iPhone in there for like 30 minutes and we'll look ridiculous, but the video is going to come out and it'll look a little bit better better than what you're seeing. And yeah, so we came up with some ideas. We did that one for Little Ends, and then for Love Is I think I was talking to Ben and we were talking about like that Coldplay music video for Yellow, and we're like, I really like that one shot, you know, slow-mo video. Let's do one of those. We haven't done one of those. So we did that one in like a pumpkin patch, and that was like obviously in October. So we did it in a pumpkin patch. But yeah, so all the videos are kind of we collaborate with different people in most of the different videos. Like for Finer Things, if you've seen the music video for Finer Things, we did that with my friend Jacob Butler, who's well known for doing videos for a band called La Lom, Los Angeles. Forgot what the acronym stands for, but they're like a cumbia band. But he's in his own rock band that we played with called Night Talks, and I was like, let's do something together. And then we rented out like a really amazing mansion in the middle of Brentwood, and we just filmed for fun basically, and he shot on his gear, and it looked great, and he edited it and directed it, and that was cool. And then Mock Dance was like a last minute thing. It was really fun. If you've seen the music video, it's basically we go in a park. I set up a tripod with my iPhone, and we just start asking people. We bring a couple of friends, but like we start asking random people, "Hey, do you want to show us your best mock dance? You want to be in a music video?" And people did, and it was like so fun. And it was just an afternoon at Griffith Park, and people really resonated with that. And we had a little bit of a picnic there too, and we just had a nice afternoon. Yeah, and then the newest video that just dropped out, the final video for Meet the End was done by our friend Eliana, who also took the photos for the front cover and the back
Okay.
cover and the photos inside of our basically all the photos for our album. We shot on film and she shot it. So everyone that we worked with the videos were all kind of like people that we like working with, or friends, like it was just kind of a nice collaborative effort. And like for Meet the End, Christina had a really good vision about that, and collabed with Eliana to try to get that out, and then turned out to be like a really dope 90s style music video. So yeah.
I read a lot of the reviews for this album, and obviously almost all of them were positive. I don't think there was anything that was negative. But what I didn't hear from any of them that I really feel like resonates with me with this album, and your other music, you really kind of have a '90s kind of throwback kind of sound.
Mhm.
I hear a lot of like not grunge '90s, but like '90s like that style. Do you kind
Yeah.
of feel that too?
Yeah. It's I think previously people say it's like post-punk 90s stuff for us. They would say Sonic Youth because obviously there's like dual vocals, or the Pixies because if you listen to Asymmetry, our previous release, like I did a lot of Pixies, like full bar chord moving up and down type of like progressions and stuff. And further, so that kind of dictated this album, because at this point when we started the album, I was like, okay, let's lean into the 90s thing. Like we love all those bands. Like why not just kind of lean into that? And people are saying we sound like them, so why don't we just like do our take on the 90s record? And it's not, there's some bands that do it so well that it's like it sounds so like the 90s. Like if you listen to the band Mama, or like you listen to, like certain bands, they're really good at hitting the target. It filters through us, and and secretly me and Christina are pop writers. We're like really like legit, like not legit, but like we love pop music. So naturally our ear will go to hooks. That's why the whole record it's basically like an arena rock record. It's these big, heavy riffs, catchy melodies that like you basically could picture in a big arena with people like singing it, and that was always the thing. That was always the North Star for us. Was like we want the record to sound really catchy, and we want it to be something that is so like anthemic, and that's what those are the bands that we really love from the '90s, basically, and then I took a cue from that, and then when I started producing the record and then eventually mixing the record, that's what I would always try to aim for would be like the kind of the '90s sound. But everyone has a different takeaway on the record. It's some people say 2000s. I heard someone say oh, it sounds. They're like, that sounds like a mid 2000s Barsuk like band. I was like, oh, that's interesting, and that's because of my production. And I was like, well, I am a first time producer, so maybe there's like a DIY feel to it, but like ultimately we were listening to a lot of 90s rock music. So yeah, definitely in our bones.
So how do you feel like Los Angeles, living in Los Angeles since 2008? How do you feel like the city influences you musically?
Yeah, I mean, it really does, especially for me and Christina and for Joe, because we're not from LA,
Mhm.
so um, our music tastes are all drastically different. But the thing that overlaps, funny enough, is like '90s music, so that's kind of why the band kind of lives in there, is because that's where it like overlaps. But um, LA is such a diverse city, so and we're surrounded by all these different types of bands and artists and the scene that that I sound like an old man at this point, but like seeing what the scene used to be in 2008 and then what had happened in the early aughts with like the indie rock band, right? And then the indie rock band died, and then suddenly it was like, where's rock music? And it's the influences kind of really just kind of stick to you living in a city where there's so many different types of artists, and some of my favorite artists locally aren't even rock bands, like they're pop artists, or they're doing, or La Lome is, for like I mentioned, is a cumbia band. They're great, they're not a pop or a rock band. So it's really cool to see that we do all have a very diverse like approach to music, and partially that's because we're surrounded by a lot of diversity in LA. So
Is it tough though because you're so like physically close and proximate to like all of this opportunity because it's LA, right? But as an
sure.
up and coming band, like that has to be a little bit of a dichotomy, right?
Yeah, especially for a DIY like
Right.
independent rock band. Like so I've been working in the music industry business side for 17 years now, or 18 years, I don't know anymore, but like when I as someone that has seen it from the gatekeeper side, and then me in this independent band doing this on our own and self-managing and self-booking and doing everything ourselves, um you know you could be in a big ass city, but like the opportunity for that, so-called big break, or like the thing that's going to bring you to the next level is as far as it could be, even if you're in the middle of America at this point, because the industry really is afraid to roll the dice anymore. Like I've spoken about this, but like in the heyday of 2000, if you think of 2008, if you think of 2006, like um, Arctic Monkeys getting found on MySpace, being mislabeled on their demo, only playing that pub a couple times, and then suddenly, like Domino decides to roll the dice on them, but like puts money into it, right? And they're kind of almost doing it in a blind way. That doesn't exist anymore. Nowadays, it's like everyone's pulling up Spotify numbers. They're looking at TikToks. They're looking at all the stats, and now they're everyone. Rock labels are afraid to put the money into it. So when you look at prominent rock bands, arena rock bands doesn't exist anymore. So like that era of bands, new ones don't exist. The Arctic Monkeys and maybe 21 Pilots might be only the last time that like a band has turned into an arena rock band. There's none left. Everyone is in this like kind of mid to low tier type of thing, and it's because the music industry has been kind of afraid to embrace rock music. But that's starting to change, and that's why I love that bands like Idols and Fontaines DC were the first to kind of come in, Shame, like first to come in and start reminding everyone that rock music is a thing. And now you have amazing artists right now who are touring and doing rock music, and I feel like there's a shift happening right now. Definitely, we saw it at South by. Definitely, there's a lot of rock bands out there.
That's a good segue. Let's talk about South by. So this was my sixth time being there. I noticed last year, and it kind of continued this year, and you can speak on this, and then we'll kind of get into your own experience. But I wanted, because you touched on this, I feel like there were a lot of female fronted rock bands, like a
Oh yeah.
lot, and a lot of them were super, super talented.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's the change that's happening right now, which it's great. I mean, that's the change of the fact that there are like women female fronted rock bands, that there are different like ethnicities and like diverse cultures being represented within the rock genre. That's like a big thing. That's why I love the fact that I grew up, no one looked like me in rock bands. All my favorite bands are all, you know, um, indie rock white dudes. So it's like,
James
and nothing wrong
Mercer,
to
right?
that. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Nothing wrong about that. But then, growing up, I really clamored to find people that look like me, and to see now that the music scene is, when there's like little girls that could be looking up to people like Bully or like Hines, or look at St. Vincent, like they see all these bands that are doing well. I was like, I could be a freaking rock band. That's why that last dinner party band is resonating so much. They came out of nowhere. They only started in the pandemic, maybe a little bit after pandemic, but there's a real need for that because, like, this is it's still a very male dominated space. So, for South by to embrace that, that's great. And you're right. It's the needle has moved more and more as the years has been going. So I feel like that change is definitely happening, and I'm glad to see it. Yeah.
So this was your first time playing South by, or you've been at South by before with other bands?
Cuffed Up played in 2022.
Okay.
So this is our second time at South by. We vowed not to come back until we had a record. So we were invited to play last year, but we decided that we were going to wait and go this year. Um, yeah, and it was the experience this year. You got to see the Pace show. You saw us in the thick of it because we had 9 shows that week, as you know, and Pace show was number 3 of 4 in a 24-hour span. So we were exhausted. And but it was great. We had such an amazing time. We became friends with like a lot of really great bands that we haven't gotten to meet yet because we haven't been on the road as much as we wanted to. So like we were out there hanging out with those bands, um, playing with presenters that we've always wanted to play with, like Pace, who has been amazing, like supporters of ours, who just it's we don't take it lightly when anyone decides that they think our music is decent enough to cover it. So we got to close out the whole South by. We were the last band to play, which is crazy. And then immediately I think we stopped at 7 o'clock, and then we had to be on stage and ready to play at Marshall Amp Funhouse at 8 o'clock. So it was a mad dash. We made it over there, and then we had a great show. But South by was is always an incredible time for us, regardless of like any of the politics that was happening, any of the controversies that was happening. We love that the fact that we could be there surrounded by the energy of other independent bands and artists who work their butts off to get there, who may have needed to spend thousands and thousands of their own dollars to even come and play a couple shows. Like it's for especially for American bands that don't get any monetary support at all, compared to like Canadian bands or bands from other countries where they do get monetary support for the arts. I think people understand the sacrifice that American bands have to try to go and play South by and do it in front of people and like really just be there to connect. And I think that's why South by is such a special week for us. And this past year was our favorite so far. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I mean it is so difficult nowadays to be a band. I mean, just the financial toll. It's just it like if you have no idea, like you just would be ignorant to it. But it is like speak on that. Obviously, as an up and coming band.
Yeah, I mean it's yeah, we're in this position where we get to see this now, like full face, being in the thick of it. Um, there's pros and cons to it. The pros is that you need less gatekeepers because you could create your own audience. We have a friend's band called Cheek Face that are amazing. Greg's the homie, and like they created that out of nothing with their own label. They're not attached to anyone, and they're even the radio campaigns blowing up. Like it's really cool to see that, but they created that by themselves, and it's a hardship to do that. Like even if they're selling out shows, there's a hardship because it takes so much sweat and grease to actually like tour or go out and tour or put out a record or write a record and stuff. And nowadays, uh, the cons of the situation is that streaming, obviously pays nothing. Companies like Spotify are terrible for independent musicians who don't, that don't pay. Like, if you look at end of the music industry brain, of my just that, the way I'm speaking right now, if you look at payouts, Apple Music and Tidal pay out a lot more. So, we're proud to be on like we were on the cover of Rock Rising for Tidal this week. It just came out like this morning or whatever, and we're like, great, that's awesome. Like they're
That is
they're they're
awesome.
doing at least they're doing their part, and we're like happy to support them. And it's fucking hard to be a musician, an independent musician. We don't the gap in between being an independent musician and then actually making a living out of it is massive. It used to be a little bit like palpable, but now it's massive. And either you're poor and you can't even, have a sustainable way of living, or you're finally making it and you're doing really well. But like those two options, the middle class has essentially become non-existent. Um, so yeah, there's pros and cons to it, but I like the pros of like the fact that we control the narrative and we could control like how we want to be perceived versus what it used to be, not just maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where all the labels would dictate everything and they would because it's their money, right? So they'd be like, well, it's our fucking money. And it's like, no, that's not just the case. It's also the band's career. They could go sign whoever they want the next day. The same goes with managers and agents. Like if I'm dealing with a band and then they say they want to do one thing, but then they're like, wait, actually, I don't think we're going to be able to do it. It wasn't our decision. Then what? Whose decision was it? And then it turns out it's their manager, their agent, or the label, or whoever on their team, and you're just like, man, just remember the power is in your hands. This is your business at the end of the day, and ultimately it's your career. And again, with tomorrow, the managers, agents, labels could go sign someone else, and it won't really matter to them at all.
Yeah.
So. I employ artists to have some agency in their careers, even when they're afraid of losing their team or whatever. Like you shouldn't be afraid. It's your own career at that point, and people will listen to you regardless of who's on your team. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And if you put out great music, they'll listen to, right?
Yeah, and that's the most important part. You just just focus on the damn music. That's the most important thing. Like we have my friend's band Draag. They're amazing, right? They're it's amazing to see what they're doing because they're the band that's just focusing on their music. That's all they're doing is focusing on their music, and it's really paying off in a lot of ways. And then it's because people hear it and they're like, whoa, that's really special. And it's because, again, they're focusing on the craft versus having to create content or like play the game of social media, which some pop bands and pop artists have to. And then, sometimes you could go another way and just hope that the music speaks for itself. So, yeah.
Social media. That's a great segue. As a podcast, obviously part of the digital world,
Yeah.
it's a necessary evil. How do you, as a band, approach social media? Is it how, like, I guess the bigger question is what level of importance do you put into social media?
Yeah. I mean, social media, it, like you said, is a necessary evil. So, but at the same time, it is this opportunity where people could really show who they are, and that's what people get to connect. The whole guise of like a band being a mystery of, in the 70s and the 80s. If you think of Prince, if you think of like anyone, the mystery was fun. That was a great time. But nowadays people want to know who you are. So for us, maybe we're not posting as much as we should be, but like every time we post, it's genuinely who we are, right? And we're showing everyone like that we are three friends in a band, that we actually do care about each other, that we have a good time, that we're here supporting each other. And that's how we deal with social media, is that we're essentially just trying to show everyone that like we are friends. We're a bunch of friends making music, and that we appreciate anyone who actually does connect with the music, um and that it's definitely something that we don't take lightly, and that we don't take, we don't take for granted. And so for social media wise, we'll do fun videos and stuff sometimes. I think that's something that we like doing because we're all a bunch of goofballs in the band, but we're not out there trying to play the TikTok game. I think it doesn't seem like we're that type of band. So, but social media is important. That's a way to connect with people, and that's I think the number one priority for us is trying to connect with people.
So let's go back to the beginning. You and Joe, you start a Death Cab for Cutie cover band in 2018. Nothing
Yeah.
before that, correct?
Um, we actually the Death Cab band
Or I'm
started
correct.
yeah, December 2016 was when it
Oh,
originally started, but we played all through 2017 is what happened.
okay.
Um, so before that, we never played with each other. So me and Joe were in, but he was in a friend's band that was doing. What happened was they were playing the Kibitz Room in Los Angeles on Fairfax, and they did a on their long list of covers. They did a Death Cab cover, and then I was like, ooh. So I leaned over to the now wife of the guitar player in the band, who eventually was in our band, Adam Newmark, and I was like, "Death Cab for Cutie cover band." And then she looked at me, and she goes, "That's a good idea." And I was like, "Great!" And then from there, I roped in Joe to be in the band, and our second show was actually opening up for Silver Sun Pickups, which is hilarious for a benefit that I created. And we just, ended up being like an opener for the benefit show, but it was like a day festival that we had, and Silver Sun Pickups headlined. Um, but yeah, so we did the Death Cab band for like a good year, and then that band eventually turned into a band called Doctor Doctor, and then we actually started putting out music as Doctor Doctor, which is my like a little bit of a solo project, but it was ultimately an actual band, and we like worked together and just wrote and put out some songs. We never put out we never put out an album. We only put out singles. And then half of the band started kind of moving away. One person moved away. One person started, trying to figure out what they want to do. And then at that point, it was just me and Joe. And then we were trying to figure out like what we wanted to do. And my friend Jake Whitener, who's now at Matador, he told me, he's like, "Hey, our mutual friend is opening up for this band that's from the UK. They're sleeping on their floor. You should come to the Echo." And I was like, "Okay, sure." So I went to the Echo, And I'm there, and I'm like this close from bailing because I was like tired. I was like, I don't know if I should. And but I decided to stick around. And then these like four pale-faced like English dudes jump on stage, and then they start playing this wall of sound, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? And it's the band Shame, and I was like, this is so. Is this allowed? Is what I kept saying. Like, is this allowed? Are we allowed to be a loud rock band? No way. And then that was it. And I was like, I think this is what I want to do. So I went back home, and that night I wrote the riff for Small Town Kid, a song that we have called Small Town Kid. So I wrote that riff, maybe wrote another idea, came back to Joe. We sat down at our favorite place called Fred 62, which is a diner in Los Feliz, and I was like, "Do you want to start? Do you want to play like fast rock music?" And he was like, "Yes." I was like, "Great." And then that was it. And then we found our bass player at the time, Vic, and then we started working on songs throughout 2018. So that was us like kind of workshopping the songs. And then by the end of the year, our other friend Sapphire joined the band, and then by 2019, I think March 2019, April 2019, we played our first show. And then we like started playing a bunch of shows. We put out two singles. One Small Town Kid was one of the first singles, and that became like song of the day at KXP. That was like the first time that they started playing us. Uh, then yeah, and then stuff was happening. It was great. Like we found a manager. So the Silver Sun Pickups run happened during that time and going into 2020. So it was like the beginning of 2020. We were doing the Silver Sun Pickups run. And then it was the pandemic that hit in March 2020, and that was when things got really derailed. Just because we were only we were 10 months in as from our first show, so we were just getting all of this like momentum. And we were supposed to play South by. We had we had a whole tour lined up. We were gonna go do stuff like there. It was like, and then the world shut down, and then at that point we all decided like, okay, we should not give up because a lot of the bands around us who never came back, there's a lot of bands that we know that never came back from the pandemic. Um, that we can't let that happen to us. So we moved out of our old lockout. We got our own lockout, just us, because obviously we're in a bubble. And then we started writing, and then that all those songs turned out to be the songs that we eventually put on Asymmetry, the EP. So we wrote like Bonnie and Canaries and all those songs there. Uh, and then uh, and then we put out the EP with Royal Mountain Records, which was great. And then we played South by in 2022. Put out a couple more singles and just kind of workshop through that. And then yeah, and then we had the kind of a rough patch because we ended up like losing most of our team. Sapphire decided to move on, which is great. Like she wanted to do stuff. We support her. She's our friend. So but we were at the point where we were about to go on tour with The Joy Formidable, and then Sapphire suggested that Christina audition for the part to come fill in for her and basically, essentially replace her in the band. And so she auditioned, and it was amazing. And we thought that she ripped it. And then so we went on tour with her for a month, and we all kind of just like basically fell in love with each other just friends wise. Like we all were like, wow, this really feels good. This is like something that like feels very natural. This feels like it feels easy. It's kind of like when you find a new relationship and you're just like, wow, it feels really easy. Like that's what we had.
Yeah.
Um, and then we came back, and then that was December of 2022, and then we decided to start writing this record, All You Got. So we spent December writing the rest of the record. So me and Christina sat in this room right here, and then we wrote like the rest of the songs. And then in January 2023, I made the crazy decision that I was going to produce the record, and then we started recording then. So that's when we started working on the record.
I love too that you guys like when Christina sings, it's kind of like a surprise.
Mhm.
It's not really like you don't
Yeah.
really have rhyme or reason when she joins in on a song. Is that by like execution or is that just by chance?
Uh, it's mostly execution. It's all pre-decided for the most part. It's just that thing that we've been doing since the beginning of the band. We love doing kind of the dual vocals, and we like kind of trading off. And yeah, so and it came natural to her too. And so, when we were sitting down and writing the record, we were able to kind of just we would either have just an acoustic guitar and we just sing to each other, or we have the tracks of a demo like just playing back in this room, and then we would just like start writing together. But naturally, that's where I feel like that's where our ears also went to. So.
So, did she have a lot of experience with songwriting before joining the band then?
Yeah, she's been playing guitar since she was, I think, 7 or something. Like she was a kid, and Christina went to Berkeley School of Music, so she's like, traditionally trained in guitar and is a great pop writer. She has her own songwriting, like more like singer-songwriter folk project that is her own personal project, and then she has another band with her friend Steph called Good Juice, which is um more like a Black Keys, White Stripes type of band. But before she joined our band and before she started that other band, she was only doing her own solo like singer songwriter stuff. So this was kind of like an opportunity for her to basically start in this like area that she hasn't really gotten that much experience with. She was a hired gun for a band called Vista Kicks, and so she got to be a lead guitar player in that band and went on tour, like opened up for the Rolling Stones and did some really amazing stuff on that tour. But then when she came back and she wanted to figure out like what she wanted to do with her time, the opportunity came along for her to be able to be a lead guitar player, in a band, but also be a collaborator in a band with us that's been around for a second, and that's a lot of pressure on someone to try to fill in shoes. But the thing that I reminded her all the time, I'm like, it's not your job to fill the shoes. You got your own shoes. you're you're walking in here and you're super talented. It's really easy to write with you. It feels very natural. That doesn't happen all the time, and it kind of just checked all the boxes by the time we sat down and started writing the record. So that's why we wrote the rest of the right. We had a couple of songs already by the time we started writing the record, but she like tweaked a bunch of parts for the existing songs, and then we easily wrote the rest of the record within a month because we were just kind of on it and just going and going, and it was just kind of flowing.
So, how many songs did you whittle down to the 10? The final 10 tracks. What did you start out with track wise? Do you remember?
Well, we had a bunch of demos. So there was the yeah, I mean in the scheme of Cuffed Up, I label things as idea, just like idea one, idea two and stuff. Um and yeah, so the at that point, I think by the time we started writing the record, we were at like idea 80, 80. Yeah, like Hello Dear Passion was originally the name was Idea 80. I remember that's like seared in my brain. Um and yeah, so there was a lot of options, but the ones that we chose, the 10 songs that we chose are songs that we chose from the demo pile, and then we fleshed it out. There wasn't any songs that got like cut on, like given up on the cutting
Right.
room floor. Like we decided on the 10, we worked on the 10, and that's the 10 that came up.
So let's talk about like the lead up to the album. After you guys are finished with it, figuring out the vinyl, figuring out all of that, like I'm assuming it was mostly put on you to figure all of that out. And what was that process like?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so I manage the band too. So, and what we were trying to do is we're all talking. We're like, okay, let me try to shop this around and see if there's anyone that would be interested. Maybe some of the who's who of the labels that you could think of off the top of your head, pretty easily. And then, so we went to them. Those labels said no, or didn't respond. And then we went to the kind of like mid tier of those labels that we love too, and we went around, and then some people were like, "Oh, it's pretty good," and blah blah blah, and then we got the door shut in our face, just like a classic rock doc, you know. And then we just kept on doing that, and yeah, like it was. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but I'm pretty sure like 100 labels said no at that point. So we were like, well, if we're gonna put this out on our own, we're already doing this on our own. So like, is it gonna hurt if we just do this on our own? We started our own little imprint that we originally put the EP out, the first EP out on, and we're like, okay, maybe we could do that and blah blah blah. And then we played a show. Um, well, that was after, but our friend's band, Double Wish, was putting their album out on the label Hit the North Records, and then it turns out Hit the North Records is run by Tom Churchill, who saw us play at South by Southwest in 2022 at Floodfest, and when we weren't supposed to play that show, we actually like last minute filled in, and he saw us by chance and liked us, and so when I told him, I was like, "Hey, we have a record we're trying to put out," and he's like, "Oh, I'd like to listen to it." And Tom like loves like taking time to listen to the record, so he took time to listen to the record. He has his own process, and he came back, and when we started talking about it, he really understood what the record was about. Like, and it's not just because like he's the only one that blah blah blah. Like we've had conversations with other people. Most of those labels didn't really understand what we were doing, but like he understood. He was like, I not only do I understand what you're aiming for, but like I do believe in this project and I love these songs. And I'm like, well, that's you go for the thousand no's and you get the one yes, and that was a prime example of that, where the music kind of spoke for itself. And Tom is such a great human being, and we only want this is what we learned is that from the beginning we were kind of saying yes to everything, and that kind of put us in a predicament where we worked with people that we liked, but they weren't the right fit. You know, this time around it was, we found someone in Tom where it was like, okay, this feels natural. It feels like his head and his heart is in the right place. Let's work on this together. I do want to work on this with him, and we could tag team this together. So we signed with Hit the North to do this one record, and we put the campaign and the whole team together, and it's been fantastic. It's honestly been the funnest release, the most easy release we've ever had. The past releases when we dealt with other labels, it might have been pretty stressful, to be honest. And this time around, it really just felt like we were doing what felt natural, and we're proud. We're just proud that people resonated to the record, not only if they were people that I was just trying to like pitch to, but like people that eventually heard the music. Like it's nice that people really like adopted the record themselves.
So was he able to kind of take a little bit of the managerial duties off of your plate once that like deal was signed,
I
or not
mean,
really?
he was able to help with all the label duties.
Gotcha.
Yeah, definitely. So we worked on, so we were able to line up like press and radio, and then we found a vinyl distribution or a vinyl pressing plant, and so we started like doing that, and it was a great vinyl plant that did a great job, that turned it around even earlier than we thought. And it's like everything was very easy. Like everything just kind of lined up itself after we dictated, where we could try to best use our resources and stuff. And yeah, and sometimes it's better to go with, you got to go with the people that champion you. It doesn't matter like if it's Atlantic Records or if it's like some big thing. Like I've been in the business long enough to tell you that like that really doesn't fucking matter at all. It really doesn't. What matters is that you have a champion in the company. So that's at that point that is where you should be going. And yeah, it's nice to have a label partner who believes in us and who believes in the record.
Well, like we said, it's all about the songs. It doesn't matter who the label is.
Yeah,
If it's a great label and they put out a bad album, I'd rather have a
yeah,
great album and a bad label.
yeah, totally, 100%.
So, like, I want to hear like a conversation that you can recall with Brian, or some sort of like, one of those moments that you had on tour with Silver Sun Pickups, because they're one of my favorite bands, and I just
Yeah,
I'm
I
gonna
mean,
fanboy for a second.
Yeah, no, it's good. We should all fanboy about Silvers and Pickups. I mean, they even in high school in my first band, I remember so vividly when Lazy Eye came out, and we were all listening to it, and we were just like, "Whoa, this is different." Like we were all talking about it, like this feels really different. What is this? And at that point, none of us has ever listened to like the Blood Brothers or anything that like Brian really like was pulling out, or Brian, whoever. And it was so for us, it was like, whoa, this feels like brand new. And it was because it was like something coming out of Silver Lake, ironically, a place where I was going to eventually live. And it's great. So when we did a little run with them, you could tell that they were just the nicest people, because after they were just like, "Hey, you guys want to hang out after the show?" We're like, "Oh yeah, that sounds really okay, cool." So we went and hung out, and we just, we got to know everyone, and it was and their like team at that their touring team is amazing. Like they honestly, every single person on that touring team are like some of the best humans, and so you could see that when you meet bands where the people that they surround themselves with are also good people. They're most likely good people, and in this case, they were very good people. And yeah, and then Brian, I think some of my favorite stuff that Brian's told me has been just like stories about like when they were on tour, when they were on like Cage the Elephant, Fools. Those are bands I really love. So he was telling me about a couple of stories with them, and you know, so it's awesome to hear the stories of like your favorite bands and seeing like where they came from and how they kind of like toured together and grew up together and stuff. It's pretty cool. And then obviously like talking to them about LA and then seeing what's changed, and Brian and the band really love new music and love supporting smaller bands. So they're always bringing newer bands on the road with them, which is I think very, very awesome. And hopefully that would be something I would do someday too. If our band ends up in a pretty good spot, to be able to lift up our communities, lift up the bands that are doing something special, maybe aren't getting as much of a platform or something, and bringing them along. So we appreciate them for that too. And we appreciate Brian being in the music video for Terminal. That was really hilarious. That was super last minute too. So
I fully agree with that. It is a troubling trend that I've seen, especially with bands that I like, that
Mhm.
don't have opening bands. And for
Really?
me,
Oh my God.
yeah, like it's promoted as like an evening with. So,
Oh, yeah.
you're not getting an opening band. You're getting maybe two sets, but like, well, that's great. But like, you can still do two sets and have an opening band that plays 45 minutes or a half hour. Like, I just feel
Yeah,
like that's a total financial move. And like, I just feel like that's shitty. Like,
it is, it
so,
is, it is shitty. That's not cool. That sounds more like an ego problem. That's,
well, hopefully it's not a label issue. Hopefully that is the
yeah.
band's choosing to do that because it doesn't make sense from a label's perspective to not do that. But it
Yeah.
is. I've seen that, and I hope that that's not a trend and it's more of just a blip. But yeah, please don't do that if you get that thing.
No, no, no. I at this point just always it's so boring to be on a bill by yourself. That just sucks. You're gonna be your own warm-up act? No, that doesn't work.
Yeah,
That's why people like having us open sometimes. We're a great warm-up act. Like we get the crowd riled up. They enjoy our music, and we're there to basically make the headliners, you know, have a crowd that's like ready to dive in with them. And that's the best part about it.
yeah, it is. It really is. It's not hard.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that is what happens sometimes. So,
Mhm.
how do you feel like LA? I mean, obviously, it's the second biggest country or city in the country, but like from an indie rock and from an up and coming band, like, are there a lot of venues that are like you don't have to be a cover band to like make it or to be able to play at?
It's gotten worse, to be honest, because of the pandemic.
Right.
So pre-pandemic was already kind of like trying to find venues and stuff, but it got worse because by the time we got out of the pandemic, we lost the satellite, we lost the Echo. Or sorry, we lost the satellite, we lost the bootleg theater, which is one of my favorite venues in town. The Echo and the Echoplex was sold off to Live Nation. A lot of changes happened, and then suddenly the town got the scene got smaller, and then there's like nowadays everyone plays at a place called Permanent Records Roadhouse, which is a cool spot. That's like a record shop, but also a venue. So there's that, and but the
And where is that
middle
in LA?
that's in Frogtown, area called Frogtown. That's kind of like along the LA River, basically, on the east side. But yeah, so nowadays there's like shitty promoters. Man, I want to call them out, but there's shitty promoters that like really like try to take advantage of bands. Sadly, I just heard that the other day. Our friend's band, who's opening up for us at our album release show, was talking about how they were like charging an insane amount of money, and then they were trying to like force them to sell a certain amount of tickets for either it's like a pay to play bullshit thing, um, or they're forcing them to do something that's really unfair, and they still take a cut, and they didn't promote. Really, they didn't promote at all. They're just making the bands pull in their own crowd. They're basically stealing. I think is the best way to call this promoters. So there's problems with those venues and the lack of venues, but the venues that we do have left are quality venues, and it's good that there's places like that are still around that could support our scene and also support the touring acts that are coming through and doing stuff. The music scene feels a lot smaller than it used to be, sadly, but the people that are here that are playing and doing stuff, at least in the rock scene or the indie rock or pop rock scene, are doing amazing stuff. Yeah.
So, do you feel like, do you see that that's going to get any better, or do you feel like it's only going to get worse?
I think it's just a lull at
Okay.
this point.
Okay.
Rock music is making a comeback, so there's more rock bands playing. Therefore, there's going to be more venues to pop up. There's more need for that, I think, at this point. Currently, we're just LA. We're in a pop era. All the pop artists are doing really well. So, and that's great because it's TikTok era right now. So they have an avenue where they could really kind of like hone in and build an audience, and people really are really into it and stuff, and those pop artists are using rock elements now, so that's cool. So there's a lot that kind of folds into it right now. I'm not gonna sound like an old person and say like, well, back in the 2000s, oh, yeah, there was indie rock bands everywhere, yeah, and it's true. We used to have like they used to do these free residencies every night, and like bands would come and blow up overnight, and it was wild. Like one time there was a band that was doing a residency at the Echo, and I was young. I was too young to be there, but I made it in there, and they had maybe I don't know like 50 people in there, and but they were playing, and I was like, this is really catchy stuff. This is good stuff, and then in a couple of days they got added to K Rock's like rotation, and then they had a song called Pumped Up Kicks, and then that fucking blew up, and the next week everyone was talking about the band. They're like, Foster the People, like what? And then you saw the line down to try to get in, and we're like, oh shit, it's happening. It happened. It like the overnight thing is like not overnight for their success, because obviously clearly the lead singer has been working his butt off to get there, but like for the band in that moment, it happened. It happened fairly quickly, and then things changed overnight. So it's not it doesn't happen like that anymore, but there's more opportunities for people to be able to do that without a label. So it's good.
So, what's your favorite venue to see a show at in LA now that after the pandemic?
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
Because I know the Hollywood Bowl I hear is amazing for like outside venues, but some
For
either
big,
club or
well, yeah, those are only big bands play
right.
that, because that's an insanely big venue. I really For small bands, smaller bands, I mean, there's a place called the Lodge Room. That's pretty good. That tends to be like a good size room, and the sound's great, and it's like a good vibe in there. Historically, there's a little shadiness behind why the venue started, but all in all, the venue for where it's at right now and for what like it's doing for the scene, it's doing a good purpose right now. Um, and I would say that and Permanent Records Roadhouse, I think is I would also say is up there just because it's an important place where everyone is actually playing shows and given opportunity to play, you know, and people like to come there. Um, the sound is questionable on stage. The stage is basically just like it's just a raised area where, there's more records and they don't mic anything. They don't mic anything. It's just other than your vocals, and it gets packed and wobbly in there. But that's also the reason why it's so fun. So for everyone in the crowd, it's a great time. For the bands, they're just like going by the skin of their teeth. But that's also it feels very rock and roll. It feels like the like an old school rock club almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so are you familiar with the band Seago?
Yeah, Sega. Yeah, yeah, totally.
Okay. So they're LA as well, and I got to
Yeah.
interview with that. I got to interview them, and they have where their setup is. They kind of have like a warehouse, and so they
Hmm.
put on shows like where
Yeah.
they live.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I've heard. I've been invited to the shows. I never got to go.
Okay.
Our first show as Cuffed Up, we actually was a similar thing. Our old practice space was in this place downtown. That was really big. We could fit like, 100 people in there. So our first show before anyone ever knew we existed. They knew me and Joe from Doctor. They knew Sapphire from another band. And then they were just like, "Oh, new project. What is this?" So people just came, and it was like the instructions was to get into the lobby and try to sneak past security. That's it. And that's what they did. They sneak past security, get to the elevator, the dodgy ass elevator, go up to take the freight elevator up, and then get to the thing. But everyone made it in there. And I saw videos of it, but we played our first show, in our own DIY space, and I think that's something special to be said about being able to throw shows in places that normally don't have shows. I think it's freaking awesome. I just saw my friend's band. They played in a laundromat. There's like a laundromat series where bands are playing in a damn laundromat, and I'm like, damn, that is so LA. I love it.
That does sound like LA, yeah. Well, even at, South by does that jam in the van. I mean, you literally
Yeah,
play in a van, so
yeah. I mean, South by in general, you'll be lucky if you have a stage.
yeah.
So and then you're just playing at that point. That's what I told Christina. It was Christina's first time playing South by, and I was like, "Hey, just be happy if there's a PA and a stage, and then just play your heart out."
Yeah,
Yeah.
it goes without saying that there's at least one sound issue per day, like with a band that you see. I mean,
I
it's
tried
just
20 for every single show that we play. Man, it was just sound. But that's the thing that everyone understands. No one's gonna be like, "Oh, your guitar cut out," or like, "Oh, like no one cares." Everyone's there just for the vibes, and they're having a good time. And it's a good example is because you were at the Pace magazine one. My wireless guitar thing kept cutting out in and out in the first two songs or three songs. I was like, "Fuck," and I had to like it kept on, every time I moved, the thing kind of cut out. So eventually, like I like had to rewire my setup and then just go directly in. And again, I was thinking like we have to finish soon because we got to get to the other venue.
sure, yeah. We got to
You
get to the
know,
fun house.
yeah, like fuck, like wow, man, no, but at the same time, it didn't actually stress me. I was just in the moment of like, okay, well, something had to go wrong, and the wiring issue is what ended up happening. But uh, that's what it is to be in a band.
So, what was the best, I guess, either connection or best, industry person that you got to meet, or anything with the band related from South by?
I think in general, we've just had a bunch of reach outs of people in the industry that just like saw us, that happened to just see us and say that they're fans, that they were like, "Wow, I didn't know about you guys, and you guys really blew me away." Or um, we've had we were like stopped in the streets a bunch. Even especially after the Marshall Funhouse show, me and Christina were at Black Keys. We were watching Black Keys at Stubbs, and people were walking up to us like gushing about the sets, and and people around us are like, "Who are these two? Why are people walking up?" And then we're just like, "Oh, thank you, yeah, thanks, I appreciate it." But yeah, I think it's not necessarily the connections. It's more of like the feedback that we got from people and like how people really resonated with our live shows because we really pride our live shows. We're a live band. That's our number one thing. And the record is my attempt trying to make us as sound like a live rock band to an extent. But really, the thing that sells us for our band, at least in my mind, is that if you're able to come see us live, like you will understand the whole picture at that point and be like,
Yeah.
wow, okay, that's what they're shooting for.
Yeah.
um,
Well,
but
that's a
yeah,
good segue. Yeah. I mean, what do we have? I know you have basically the month of May. You pretty much have a West Coast tour. You have a date in June. What can we expect then for the rest of the year that you can share?
yeah. So let's see. When are you planning to put this recording up? Is my question.
This will be this Wednesday coming up. We'll release. So today's
Okay,
Sunday. So yeah, Wednesday.
it's Wednesday. Well, this will be breaking news for people at this point, but it'll eventually come out. Is that we're doing so we have the album release show on May 2nd in LA. We're playing a show in Las Vegas on the May 3rd, which we love Las Vegas. There's a promoter out there named Pulsar who's incredibly like important in that music scene, and we love coming out there, and the scene's great. Um, we also have a San Diego show in June, June 29th, I think,
Yep.
that we're playing with this legendary rock band called Little Hurricane that I grew up like listening to. They were one of the bands I was talking about who had a residency at the bootleg, and that was like a massive thing for me to the point where when I had a two-piece folk rock band when I was 21, we would cover they would cover their one of their songs because we loved them so much. So luckily for me, I became friends with them after the fact, and then so now they're playing shows again, and naturally I was like, please, can we play a show together? and so we're playing our favorite venue in San Diego called Soda Bar. So we'll be out there playing Soda Bar. And then we originally had dates in Seattle, Seattle, Portland, Berkeley, California, and Redding, California for the All You Got tour. But we're unfortunately going to have to reschedule that tour. Well, at least those four dates. Those four dates. So I think it's looking like it's going to move to July. So definitely keep an eye on our Instagram to see where the dates move, but we're gonna be aiming to reschedule those in July, just because we had some family emergencies, logistical problems. So again, we talk about being in a band. It's not just being in a band. It's balancing the fact that like not only is a band could be three, four, five people, but there's like families in every single one, and then there's like health in every single thing. There's like so many pitfalls of why bands can't go on the road or have to cancel shows or what is it like our other friends band Deathlands were in a terrible position, and it was always van related. It's always van related. Our vans are vans typically break down a lot, so um the touring again, and touring is really rough. It's really rough, especially no one has tour support, so we're all carrying this on our own backs. So to anyone listening, definitely give the grace to your favorite bands if they have to reschedule or if they have to push things back, because it's really things really have to line up for you to be able to go on the road.
Yeah. Yeah. So Little Hurricane,
Yeah.
I we saw them at South by 17 or 18, I think, at the
Wow. Yeah.
Whole Foods. And
Oh yeah,
again,
I love that live show. That's
Yeah,
great.
like they blew me away, and I was like, "Oh my God!" They had some like health problems or something, correct? Something happened, right?
Yeah, so Ant Anthony got to a
Bike
motorcycle
accident.
accident.
Yeah, right. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so sadly he got in a motorcycle accident. So he's been from what I've heard he's been in just like physical therapy trying to get back into playing more shows. They played a show for New Year's, I think. That was their first show back. So they're back into it. That's the
They're
thing is like
so
they're
good.
starting to play shows. And they're
Yeah,
so good. And
they
it's
are.
like it just like brings me it brings me back to being 21 and trying to get into clubs and seeing them play and just being like amazed by the fact that there's only two of them and I'm like this is incredible. So yeah, so they're great human beings and currently now they're parents, so great parents and I love being able to see the journeys of bands that I've admired for a long time, and see where they go. And I think it's like a good testament. I'm trying to get people to just go listen to them again and go see them live because they're too good. They're too freaking talented to be like overlooked right now. So
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. Even 6 years ago, I said that. So yeah, but yeah, when I heard that about the accident, that was just such a tragedy. So hopefully he can fully recover.
yeah, he's playing shows, and that's I think the most important part is he's doing what he loves. So that's great.
Well, and in the end, man, that's what, like, if you can do something that you love, like it's everything else kind of
Yeah.
just falls into place, right?
Yeah, and we talk about this all the time in the band. It's just like, man, we're lucky to be in the position where we could do what we love. You know, not everyone, not everyone has been able to like devote their career to a place where they're able to actually do something that they're really passionate about. I mean, there's so many people that I meet where they tell me like they may be even younger than me at this point because I'm getting older, where they're like, oh man, I wish I could go on stage. Man, I wish I could do what you do and go on stage and play. And I was like, yeah, you could do it. If I could do it, you could totally do it. Like, there's nothing stopping you at this point. But it's really just life at that point. It's like trying the trajectory of your life of like where you decide to put your eggs in a basket, and then you start to, But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with deciding like, hey, being an artist is tough. I don't want to do that. Like that's just not going to be it. Maybe I could help artists in one way. Maybe I could contribute in another way, show them the love that they deserve and be there for them. Like at some point I'm going to be that person too. Like I mean I am that person now, but like where I'm maybe not playing as much and I'm able to like help others. Like that's why I love doing what I do now is my you could call it a day job is really my career at this point because I've been doing A&R for 9 years. Like I love being able to help other people's careers because you know it's one thing to be selfish about just working on your own thing, but like really if you're able to help other people's careers in any way, that I think that really kind of comes back around because um just in such a tough spot right now, and I think that people really need music, and it's sad to me to think that maybe someone with like an amazing voice and an amazing like artist project may never be able to get to a platform for where everyone can listen to them because of really
Yeah.
because of the world. So I'm hoping that that's why I appreciate people like you and like folks that are doing podcasts or like or people who support like bands like us because that's really how we all still exist in the world because at this point the odds are against us as independent bands and we love hearing that fact that people actually like appreciate the music that we put
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah, all ships rise, man. All ships rise. That's I've always felt that. So, um, you know, I want to end with this. You
yeah.
were in a Death Cab for Cutie cover band. I
Yeah.
want to hear your favorite song that you covered by them, that you guys
Oh,
played.
yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna have to think about this. So we played a lot. We played and we the longest set we played was like an hour and a half. So we were able to cover the gambit of, and we were called we named ourselves after a deep cut from Transatlanticism. So we called ourselves Expo '86, and that was a great song from Transatlanticism. I will say Transatlanticism is probably my favorite record. So and I this is morbid, but I think my favorite song might be Tiny Vessels because so it's so mean. Not and I've heard now Ben speak about it and how he's friends with that ex and they talk about it and everything's cool and they just kind of laugh at the fact that like he did write the song about it, you know. Um, but it's just one of those songs where just like, man, this person really is feeling one type of way and you could feel it in the songwriting, you could feel it in his performance. Um, So I would say that's probably like more of a deep cut type of favorite song of mine. It's kind of hard to choose because the all the records are so good. Transatlanticism itself, I think, is like a massive one for me too. Sorry, go ahead.
Did you do anything off the Open Door EP?
Uh,
Like Diamond and
no.
Tether or Little Bribes or anything like
You
that?
know what's crazy is that I worked on that. I was the tour publicist for Ben during his solo record, but I think we did some stuff for them around that time. Um, yeah, Diamond and Tether. It was a lot of like B-sides. It was all B-sides, but it was
Yeah.
like kind of low
So
key. Like,
good.
wow, I think they were B-sides Too Narrow Stairs,
I think
right?
you're right. Yep. Yep.
And then I would say if a Narrow Stairs is my favorite record, my favorite song on that record, it has to be Cath. I think Cath. Oh my God, I'm gonna blank on it. I think Cath, Tiny Vessels, and then I would say Grapevine Fires probably are my like favorite Death Cab songs. How about you? What's your
Black
favorite?
Sun's up there too. Black Sun is
Oh, cool.
such, man, that song. There's something about that song. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You chose like a newer one, so which is cool because that
Yeah.
record was amazing.
Kensuke, I think, is probably what their most underrated album and one of my favorites. It's not my favorite, but that album doesn't get a lot of love amongst like their fans. I don't know why.
Yeah, they still play the songs, which is
Yeah,
good.
absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, there's I don't know. It's just interesting to see like the I think my hot take and unpopular opinion is that I think my least favorite record might be maybe second to least favorite record might be Plans. Um,
Okay.
it's their biggest record. And I Will Follow the Dark. I love that song, you know, like but the it's there's something about transatlanticism that feels like is such a good snapshot of the band.
Yeah.
And have you watched their documentary Drive While Sleep Carefully?
I'm not. I'll have to.
No. Um, it's I think they released it digitally now. For a long time, for like 20 years, you could only find it on DVD, which is why I had like three copies of it on DVD. But they had a friend go on tour with them during the last Transatlanticism tour where they were already selling out like shows and stuff, and they just signed Atlantic and they didn't work on plans yet. So they're in this like
Oh, wow.
snapshot and they filmed it on 35 mil and they took it, the director, it took him a year to even cut it.
Wow.
Um, and it is like a time capsule. It is so incredible. And they do all these like interviews with everyone and they're talking about life on the road and then having to talk about like transitioning into being on a tour bus and then suddenly like more people knowing about them and then them signing to Atlantic and like being afraid about like what that could mean. But you know, it's like it is such an interesting time. So I would highly suggest checking out Drive While
Yeah.
Sleep Care.
And that was Chris Walla time too. That was,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
peak Chris Wall time at that
Right.
point. So, you know, they recorded a lot of transatlanticism at like Hall of Justice and, you know, at his own studio. So, um,
That's
yeah, I could talk
fascinating.
about it forever. It's just Death Cab is I learned how to sing playing Death Cab songs, which is ironic because now people I'll still hear reviews sometimes where they're like, it's like Ben Gibbard cover fronting a post-punk band. And I'm like, Oh my God. Yeah. Probably. Yeah, it makes sense. They have no idea. They didn't do the research. They just thought that's what it sounds like, and they are absolutely correct. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty spot on a little bit. Yeah. They aren't
that's pretty
wrong.
much it. Yeah, yeah. And I have the same kind of timbre, and yeah, I think we're both sopranos, so can't run away from it. But I'll embrace it because I love Death Cab.
Yeah. So the thing about Silver Sun pickups that I can't get over, and especially with Lazy Eye, and I think that was the first taste of what they could bring, is like there is an intensity in their music. Like it
Yeah,
is like it's like not Nine Inch Nails intensity, like it's a different kind of intensity, but like there
yeah,
is definitely an intensity that they can bring out, and it's sometimes it's momentary, it's sometimes the whole song. Like
yeah.
Panic Switch is just my
I,
God.
that's
Like,
that's
good
what I
Lord.
thought when you said intensity. That's the song that came up in my head is Panic
Yeah.
Switch. It's funny because like Brian sings so he sings in like a soft way, but there is an intensity in his delivery that surpasses even like anything that would be sonically like registering as loud or whatever. But it's something that you could hear from his gut,
Yeah.
and that's something I tried to do too. I really I pride myself in trying to do that, and you see it now, even now with bands like Idols or well, Joe Talbot actually screams, but he sings too. He sings a lot. Or like a band like Fontaines DC, where the lead singer like kind of sings and talks sings and
Mhm.
but there's moments on the record and live where his voice isn't necessarily piercing, but it's almost poetic. It's almost like he's saying poems, but the gravitas of like how he's landing those words is could feel really, really, heavy. And that's, I think Brian has that same like special power, you know.
I think Andy Hall from Manchester Orchestra does that too.
Sure. I mean, his voice is insane.
It is.
Yeah,
But
his
there's
voice
that
is
intensity too, like that, like that's kind of similar. So that's a good story. So I think of all the concerts that I've seen, my friend, and I've seen a lot, I got to see in Baltimore at Rams Head Live, Silver Sun Pickups, Manchester Orchestra, and Cage the Elephant were all on the same bill.
that's insane. That's an insane bill.
Yeah.
That's like an alt rock person's dream.
Yeah, it was like, and I think they only did like, I want to say like under 15 dates. It might have only been like 10 dates. But yeah,
Yeah,
like I was a fan of all three of those bands, and like they were all kind of, I think Cage was the headliner.
sure.
But it was, yeah, I mean, unbelievable. Like you'll never see those three bands in the same bill again.
Yeah, apart from like maybe a festival or
Yeah,
something, but not
yeah.
on the same bill. Yeah,
But
those
even
those
now,
old
even music festivals now that Live Nation has taken over, like they're terrible. Like the lineups are terrible. It's
yeah. Yeah, yeah. They're definitely only catering to like a certain group now.
yeah,
That's
it's like a homogenization. Like yeah, it's
well, it's
disappointing.
basically the same. It's the same lineup everywhere you go.
Yeah. Red Hot Chili Peppers and Noah Kahan.
Yeah, 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 basically. And no offense to both of those a
Right.
band and artists. Obviously, they're they have fans and they're great. And I'm a big like Red Hot Chili Peppers fan. But when you're right, when it becomes homogenized and like it becomes like a cut and paste job, that's where at that point it's like it should just every festival should be its own type of
Unique.
festival.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping there's other festivals that are smaller that do good that are
Yeah.
doing good stuff. So
Yeah. Newport Folk Festival is always one of the best.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good
Shaky
one.
Knees seems to always have a pretty good lineup down in Atlanta. But yeah, you're right. It's a lot of just crap. But anyway. Well, Ralph, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I hope you had as much fun as I did. And
Yeah,
best
this
of
was a
luck,
great.
my friend.
Thank you
The
so much.
band, yeah, the
Thanks for
band
the
is
support.
Cuffed Up. The debut album is called All You Got. Go check them out. Go check out their music. Go check out the album. Support them any way you can. And again, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe our channel, our YouTube channel, our social media pages. Do all that fun stuff. That helps us. That helps the bands. And check out our sponsor, RAR Outfitters, RAWR Outfitters.com. Ralph, thank you so much.
Thank
Everyone,
you.
I've been Dog. You've been great. This is the Music Lab podcast. Hell yeah, man.
Nice. Great.